Okay, and up next we have a presentation from Breann Corcoran. Breann is an environmental health scientist from the BC Centre for Disease Control. And Breann will be sharing a bit about her project called EcoLens, sharing climate anxiety, building collective empathy, and creating climate hope. Welcome, Breann.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here and share with you a little bit about the EcoLens project. So I'm just going to pull up my slides here. Can you see that okay? Yep.
Yes, we can see your presenter notes too. Just
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Let me try that one more time. Um, just one second here.
That looks great.
That looks better now. Okay. Just adjusting it a little bit. Okay. Okay. Well, I am going to be talking today about the EcoLens project, which is a project that I am leading in my role as environmental health scientist with the BC Centre for Disease Control. Um, and it's a platform that we're currently developing that will be launching later this spring to share climate anxiety, build collective empathy, and hopefully create some climate hope. So I'm really pleased to be here. And before I get started, I want to acknowledge that I am joining from the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations, who have cared for these lands, waters, and skies since time immemorial. So storytelling has really been central to Indigenous ways of knowing, for example, carrying knowledge, culture, and history across generations. And through stories, either spoken or written, through art or other land-based teachings, it can be a real source of wisdom, resilience, and also connection to place. And as we've been kind of conceptualizing the EcoLens platform, we want to ensure that we're listening, learning, and honoring these stories, also ensuring that Indigenous voices and perspectives continue to shape our collective future. So in terms of my presentation today, I'll be sharing a little bit about background in terms of the role of storytelling, and the importance of building empathy and how that kind of sets the stage for climate hope. And then I'll get into talking a little bit more in detail about the platform and what we're designing, and then open it up to questions if there's time. So storytelling really is a powerful force that can bring people together and create shared understanding, connection, and belonging. And it's through stories that we can maybe make sense of our experiences, on our histories, and even think about new possibilities. And I think especially important during times of uncertainty like climate change, it can really help remind us that we're not alone in this, that our experiences matter, and that together, collectively, we can imagine a better world. So I really like this quote by the Climate Disaster Project, which is run out of University of Victoria. They say, if we can survive this new age of disaster, we can survive this new age of disaster if we build empathy and solidarity around the experience of climate change, because story creates community and community creates hope. And so when stories are shared, they can really build community and help to foster empathy, build relationships, help amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard. And then if we can build that kind of strong community, I think it can go a long way in terms of nurturing climate hope. I wanted to share this video. Some of you may have already seen it. Something I came across a few months ago, and it's been a real source of inspiration and deep wisdom. So I'd encourage you, we obviously don't have time to watch it here today, but I've shared the link and I'd encourage you to go take a look after. But, some key points that I really wanted to highlight is that climate grieving is an important process. And in doing so, it can actually kind of lighten the load So it is important that we take the time to grieve. And then when we do that, I think can be in a better space to talk about climate hope and action. And Ricardo, the speaker in this video, really emphasizes that hope is not just a feeling, it's really a commitment and more action oriented. Sorry. And that, he really inspires the listener to think about, stepping up and acting. And so, yeah, would really encourage you to watch it. And it's been really, really inspirational as we kind of think through the EcoLens project as well. Also, when thinking about the EcoLens project and some of the project aims, being a place for collective empathy and solidarity around the experience of climate change. So it brought me back to this design thinking process, which was developed by Stanford University. And at the core, one of the first steps in any design thinking is to empathize, to really understand the user's needs. And so I think that within the context of health and thinking about climate change and health, design thinking can really help create more meaningful solutions if we're really truly understanding the users and their experiences and the emotions that they're having, and to really create solutions that will truly resonate. So I think empathy really helps us see through the eyes of others, uncovering insights that might otherwise be overlooked, and kind of adding some nuance and layer to our understanding, and becoming really, human-centered and lived experience, really focused on that. So I think in thinking about the EcoLens project really being an important process, this sharing of collective empathy. And then with that, I think that we can see potentially and hope to see more climate hope and action. So once we've had that opportunity to grieve and build community and solidarity, we can perhaps be in a better place to find resilience and hope in the face of climate change. And just wanted to kind of touch on, hope theory, which was developed by Snyder, and going back to Ricardo's point around it being really action oriented, right? And so if to have hope means you can both have, agency, you feel like you can take action, as well as, that there are pathways to do so. So, and I think once you do have hope, there are positive health outcomes with that as well, both physically and psychologically. And this is reflected nicely too in the First Nations mental wellness continuum. At the core of that wellness circle you see here is hope, purpose, meaning, and belonging. So to have hope really can foster mental wellness and health. So now kind of bringing it back to the EcoLens project, one of the first goals really is to build that collective empathy and solidarity around the experience of climate change, and hopefully inspire some hope and action too. And then the second important piece for us is to enhance access to qualitative data that are meaningfully generated by individuals and communities, and enrich the surveillance systems that we have here in BC. So my team at BCCDC, we have a climate preparedness and adaptation program, and have been busy, and I know many others across the province collecting some great data, but really hoping that EcoLens can supplement and complement some of this data by providing, lived experience, qualitative, stories that will add that context and nuance to some of the health impacts of climate change. So some more kind of context and background, as I mentioned earlier, it supports some of our work within the climate preparedness and adaptation strategy. It's going to help us address some gaps in our current data gathering by having that qualitative piece and gathering lived experience and local realities, and hopefully expanding to include more underrepresented voices in our data collection, as well as support mental wellness. And so what this will look like is it's going to be a mobile and web application that will be, community science. So user submitted images, stories, and other personal accounts from BC residents on the health impacts of climate change. And we're working towards a launch date this April. And it is photo voice inspired. So, photo voice is a participatory action research method, qualitative, that combines photos and accompanying narratives from participants. It's been used since the 1990s, and it's been used actually quite extensively in climate change and extreme hazard research. And and it can create real good place-based understandings of some of these extreme events, often focusing on marginalized or unexplored community perspectives. For example, it can be used within a climate change context, maybe to photograph areas affected by extreme weather events, or, to document transformation of local landscapes over time, and just help reveal some, these experiences, these perceived, changes, and, additional nuance and connection between climate change and health. And it can be a really effective way to, record people's strengths and concerns, promote critical dialogue and knowledge about important issues, and can be an effective way to reach policymakers as well. Some of the guiding principles for the EcoLens project, we chatted and engaged with many folks throughout the province over the past few months, and have heard, the importance of place-based data. So ensuring that the content really reflects meaningful community-centered data is really important. So being able to, like, for example, navigate to specific regions and really understand what's going on in particular towns or areas or communities, and be able to share knowledge back that's kind of tailored to those communities. We also want to hear from diverse voices to really prioritize underrepresented groups. Community engagement is another important principle for this work, really being, I think, going to be a factor in the success of this, right? Being able to engage communities on the stories, the photos. So that's going to be an important part. And kind of back to the photo voice method, it really is around having a discussion about the photos and what it means. Asset-based, again, we want to make sure that we're also highlighting stories of resilience and adaptive capacity and hopes to really inspire and mobilize action. So we're thinking that through in the way we're designing the website in terms of, things like color palette, for example, but also ways that we can go about highlighting those stories. Another really important thing that's come that we want to prioritize is that piece around reciprocity. So giving back to communities, they're sharing with us their stories. So how can we give back? Is it different project assets, resources, and connecting them to various supports depending on what, they may have shared. So that's something we're thinking through. As well as two-eyed seeing, we want to make sure we incorporate both Indigenous and Western knowledge systems, and we're, working with some Indigenous partners, Indigenous artists, to make sure that this comes through in the website and the platform itself. We're also considering, beyond just photo voice, other arts-based submissions, perhaps even oral stories to be more accessible to folks. And then finally, tailored knowledge translation outputs. We want to make sure that we've got different types of data available, whether it's at the community level, maybe it's at community showcases of the photos themselves, or it's a policy brief. So thinking through those different components that are going to be essential for the success of this. So some core features, what you'll see when it's launched in April, it's going to be highly visual, combining both photos and images and other user-generated content. And users will be able to explore both thematically, if there's a particular climate change topic they're interested in, or geographically for that, getting at that kind of place-based data. So be able to explore, using BC map or Indigenous territory maps. There is going to be moderation and analysis kind of on the back end, as BCCDC will be, administering this website and doing some of the moderation there, and then later reporting. There will be some elements of interactivity with, users able to engage with content through things like likes, and also connect to different resources, for example. We are highlighting Indigenous perspectives and worldviews, art. We're working with an Indigenous artist currently on the logo, for example, and some of the design features on the website. And then data access is also important, that we can consider, that analysis and reporting piece around knowledge translation. So we're still designing the website right now. I just wanted to give you a quick sense of what it might look like, highly visual page to kind of explore different photos. Once you can click on a photo, you can read about the story, but then also be able to navigate to more from here or more like this, for example. And And then going back to the knowledge translation piece, we really want to make sure that we, can tailor some of what we're learning and some of these, wonderful stories and data, rich data that we'll have to both the community, back to community, to our public health workforce, as well as, policymakers, for example. So just thinking through different kind of knowledge translation products. And the one that gets me really excited too is this community showcases piece. Being able to showcase some of the photos and stories in community. And we're working on a grant application with the Climate Disaster Project to have a roving museum in 2028 to showcase some of these stories and photos. So yeah, very excited about that. And then, yeah, so April 2025, we're planning to launch here in BC. I know this is folks calling in from across Canada, but yeah, this will go live in BC in 2025, April 2025. In the meantime, as we kind of generate content for launch, we are seeking photos and stories to have ready to go. So I've got this temporary Google form as we're building out the website, but if folks have stories or photos that they want to share, please feel free to check out that link and consider submitting something. I'll make sure these slides are available to you and that link is there. And yeah, just giving you kind of a sense of some of the mood board that we created and some of the colors and imagery you might see on the website. And I think I will leave it there and open it up to questions if there's time. I've got my contact information at the beginning of the presentation, so feel free to reach out afterwards if we don't have time to do questions today.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for a great presentation, Breann. It's really nice to see how this is developing. So we do have a question in the chat, and the question from Ashley is, would this app or website be child youth friendly, or is it geared towards a young adult audience?
Yeah, great question. I think there's so much great potential application of this website for that kind of child and youth audience, but for the time being, it's kind of 16 plus. So we are working actually as part to get ready for launch. We're working with some undergraduate students right now to get some stories. So young adults for sure. But we hope, I think it would make such a wonderful, project for high school students, for example, to do this type of thing. So exploring that. But at the time being, it's kind of 16 plus.
Okay, great. There's a question in the Q&A from Tongreen Tan. And the question is, I'm curious what demographic data you might be collecting. I was thinking submissions might have themes related to one's age, for example.
Yeah, so we will be collecting we want this to be really user-friendly, that, quick access, so no login will be required. But once people submit a photo and a short story and a title, they'll also be required to, provide some location data that will be jittered for privacy purposes later. But we will be collecting some optional demographic like age range, because I think it would be, for those, under 18, for example, we might want to be able to tailor some of our knowledge translation, like understand what youth are saying, for example. So we will have optional age, data, gender, whether folks identify from racialized group. Yes, there's a few demographic questions that optional, of course, that we'll be asking.
Great, thanks. And I think we have time for one last question comment from Naomi. She says, amazing, I'm looking forward to April. Is the ask primarily for people to share their emotions and how climate change is impacting them, or does it also include telling stories of climate action, successful community solutions, etc.?
Yeah, both. It's quite open at this point. I think it's going to be difficult to really anticipate exactly what we will hear because it is user generated. So we are developing a bit of a moderator protocol, but I think we would welcome posts both on, emotions, but also just would love to hear stories of climate action, resilience, successful kind of solutions. So yeah, I think it would be wonderful to have both.
Well, great. Okay, thanks very much. And your presentation provided a great segue. We're moving into, believe it or not, the last part of our summit, which is looking at arts-based approaches, talking about climate.